Who has never looked at the boxy atrocity that is a Wiimote and wished for a rounder shape? Let's transform the Wiimote into something more comfortable. The original design is fine, however, some games on the Wii and Wii U force the player to use the Wiimote sideways. The final goal is to have a case that feels as good as the SNES controller in landscape mode and yet usable in portrait mode. The triggers will be a duplicate of A and B, but the original buttons will be kept for portrait mode. Basically, we want to fuse both casings while leaving the minimum of space for soldering the buttons. First, cut a hole in the Super NES controller case with any tool. Then, you can superglue the Wiimote in the hole. To keep the look consistent, let's add the tip and end of the Wiimote. To access the on-off button, we'll need to alter the SNES controller case by cutting a hole and rebuilding a rounded wall around it. Then, make the surfaces flush by adding some Bondo, sanding, and painting. On the other side, we want to add only the plus, minus, and home buttons to the Super NES controller. A 1 button is used instead of the very large original A button. Just cut a hole that's about the same size and glue in the buttonholes ripped from the Wiimote case. Then, with epoxy, fill in the gaps and sand the surfaces flush. Off-camera, the case is painted and sanded so that the buttonholes feel like they're a part of the case. The key to making this mod look somewhat official is to sand thoroughly so that it looks like one solid piece. When there are no more cracks nor holes, you can do a final coat of paint. To ensure compatibility on the Wii U, a Wiimote Plus is used. We will only keep the parts of the PCB that actually make up the buttons. The idea is to rewire the Wiimote's buttons to the SNES controller's buttons. You can see that the Y and B lines are bridged with solder to have the buttons doubled. The same thing is done for X and A. The B button will be doubled on the left trigger, and the A button will be cloned at the right trigger. 1 and 2 are respectively B and A, or Y and X. The Wiimote PCB will be left untouched. Wires will be soldered on top of it to extend the buttons. For additional info on how to extend any controller, you can have a look at this other video covering the subject. When soldering wires to a copper surface, remember to glue them afterwards so that you can't rip them off. Remember to always test everything at every step. When all the buttons are hooked up and soldered, it's time to actually put them in the case. They are positioned with hot glue and then permanently set with epoxy. They have to be sturdy enough to resist hard button presses. The home, plus, and minus buttons just have a little plastic extension to compensate for the little height bump. They are able to press the corresponding tact switch on the Wiimote motherboard. When the glue has cured, it's time to close the case and make sure everything works. There we have it, all the buttons work and the controller feels great in landscape mode. The bumps on the left and right side from the Wiimote extension are almost not noticeable. Portrait use is obviously impaired, but finally, games such as Kirby's Return to Dreamland or Smash 4 are comfortably playable with only a Wiimote. Not to mention, this can double as a PC controller through Bluetooth. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. Make sure to look for music links in the description. If you want updates on these builds as they are being made, consider following the Rated E Mods Facebook or Twitter.